So he is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And the U.S. Attorney's Office only comment would be to direct you to the testimony today and the filings at the clerk of court's office. Besides that, we have no comment.
That was Thursday. U.S. Attorney for South Carolina Brian Sterling talking about the arrest of now suspended House lawmaker R.J. May. 10 federal child porn distribution charges. Investigators say he even set up a fake Facebook account to document trips out of the country where he paid for sex with underage girls, also sharing more than 200 pornographic files through his home Wi-Fi network in spring 2024 through his cell phone as well. That's where we begin on a Sunday morning. Certainly not a pleasant place to begin, but this is a serious situation that we are dealing with, and it does speak to some issues that we have addressed here on this show before on Connect to the Capitol each and every Sunday throughout the legislative session, which is now over. As usual, we welcome in Catherine Glenn Foster and Dave Wilson. This is cybercrime. All of this done online except for the allegations about sex with underage girls in a foreign country. I think we expected an arrest to come. The rumors have been swirling for nearly a year after the home was searched almost a year ago now and dozens of devices seized. But this indictment that you have right over there, this is some disturbing stuff.
This is the kind of thing that, you know, unless you have experience with this kind of thing, with reading about it, with addressing it, with fighting it, and a pretty strong stomach, this isn't the kind of thing that ordinary South Carolinians should be reading. It's that level of disturbing.
We're talking 22 pages of an indictment, and the descriptions. The descriptions themselves are difficult to read because the descriptions are pornographic, and you see what has gone on, and the fact that any attempt, let's just be honest, any attempt to turn around and say, well, I was hacked, and you look at the evidence that comes off of phone usage and social media usage and how other searches were done on opposing candidates while you're on a fake account.
On some of the fake accounts.
That sort of stuff just cannot hold up to some sort of defense of, oh, I've been hacked.
Right. I mean, the same device, the same IP address was used to, you know, call his wife, text, "Amen, Happy Easter," you know, and then access and distribute and request more child pornography.
Right.
And so this back and forth, the pattern that was established in this indictment really is damning.
So keep in mind, an indictment is basically what you have been accused of, but we still have the rule of law that you are innocent until proven guilty.
As we heard the U.S. Attorney say.
And so in this particular case now, this will eventually go to trial, but the big thing towards the end of the indictment was, keep in mind, this is a person with 2 young kids at home, and some of the searches that were being done, some of the evidence that was there are of children of similar ages.
We're talking about 6 to 10 years old, same age range as his
own
children. Right, prepubescent children. And so in that case, and some of the videos, most of the videos in fact, were describing activity with toddlers. Boys and girls. So we're talking about a very disturbing situation here, and we really just need to take a step back as well, because as we know, as Brian Sterling said, innocent until proven guilty. But we do know beyond a shadow of a doubt that these videos exist and that they depict sexual activity with children.
Now, we're not saying that he was doing that, but he was trading on a pornographic social media platform. He was trading videos with other people and requesting types of videos at the same time.
Right, that's what's been alleged and what the state is going to try to prove.
Right.
The case and the indictment looks pretty straightforward.
It does.
But as I was saying though, no matter what, even if somehow he was hacked, and if there's some way that someone can get into your phone and do these things on your same device as you're texting your wife and engaging in legitimate activity, nonetheless, these
and searching up your opponents.
Right. But nonetheless, these videos exist, and these children have been abused.
Right.
And so we have to think of them first and about protecting all the other children in our community, because these poor children who just need to be rescued. And so so we need to pray and we need to act.
Yeah, action. That's the second part of this story. And some of the statements that have been coming out from both sides of the aisle. We had the Democratic Party chair saying, hey, it's time for action. Let's hold people accountable. Let's not wave the flag of your own party. Republicans control the state. So they're saying, let's hold this man accountable if it comes to be that this is a guilty verdict. The Attorney General Alan Wilson on Friday saying no one is above the law. We are all about protecting children. The House Speaker suspended May immediately after the charges. We will not see him back in that state house, but
and we will not see him out of jail either, because bond was not set. There was no bond set.
Stay in jail until trial is what it sounds like, according to that judge. I'm sure that he'll have attorneys revisit that, and they will try. But there's another one that came in from Representative Jermaine Johnson, who said he called the allegations disturbing, but he also went to the next level. He said, we aren't doing enough in this state to protect our children. The Internet Crimes Against Children units, they need more funding. That can only be done at the State House. We know that the Attorney General pushed hard on that this year. Got some laws passed to help better attack these type of criminals online. But the money is another different animal.
It sure is, but you're right. Alan Wilson, our Attorney General, has repeatedly called for greater enforcement, greater tools to be able to use. And even a couple of weeks ago, that week when I was gone, when I was stuck on that plane in D.C. for a few hours, back and forth to the gate, you two were talking about the AI porn issue.
Yes.
So across the board, this issue of pornography keeps coming up, these cyber crimes, and how we're going to best address them. Representative Johnson is correct. We need to analyze and figure out how exactly we're going to attack this in a more effective way, because after the fact, as the indictment said, it's often a stroke of luck when you have a law enforcement officer who happens across one of these secret video trading rings, and then once someone is caught, they really have to be in jail, because you can't monitor everyone's every device. These things are being traded around on cell phones, and without parole officers coming in and searching your home on a basically daily basis, I think it said basement to attic, there's no way to do enforcement, and parole can't even do that.
And so that now leaves us at a place where we have been talking about various laws that have been put into place. Representative Brandon Guffey out of York County, one of the original laws along this line was the law that was created after his son committed suicide after
it was an online
revenge porn. And so we're watching these things begin to spin themselves out, and I think what we're seeing now is the natural evolution of pornography's impact as we're seeing it playing itself out, being so readily available. And that's where the state of South Carolina has put some limits on what's there and what you have access to by cutting off groups like Pornhub and other pornographic sites that cannot be accessed without some level of age verification. But again, we're talking a state representative in his mid to late 30s in a situation like this. This is the sort of thing that's also having some other repercussive impacts, because keep in mind too, he is also one of the founding members of the Freedom Caucus.
Which he's no longer a member of.
No, he's no longer a member of that, and that has caused a huge bit of rift among the Republican majority that exists in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, this topic is not going away anytime soon. We are going to revisit this issue in the months ahead, more in depth. As you said, the details of this are disturbing. We do have that indictment on our website for those who want to do their own research, because we don't want to verbalize a lot of these things.
No, we don't.
So it's there at WACH.com if you would like to do some more of your own research, because we don't want to talk about that on a Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
What we're going to talk about next has to do with money. Again, as always, here on Connect to the Capitol, and a lawmaker essentially suing himself or the own body that he serves on. That's coming up next.
This is the wrong way to do it. It violates the Madisonian principle that the legislature cannot take the people's money and appropriate it to themselves in real time. If there is to be a pay raise, the pay raise can only take effect after the people, by way of election, have had an opportunity to decide who gets that pay raise and who does not.
That's Senator Wes Clymer right there, talking about the state budget that the governor signed off on about a week ago. Includes a pay raise for lawmakers like the senator himself. But he wants to call that into question. He and his attorneys, Dick Harpootlian and Carol Herring, called a news conference last week, challenging that $18,000 pay raise. They want the state Supreme Court now, my friends, to determine if this funding increase is in fact constitutional. You know some things about constitutional. So let's talk about this money matter at the State House and why this suit is even being filed.
Yeah, so essentially we have lawmakers attempting to give themselves a pay raise, which calls into question how you're allowed to do that. And so we saw Senator Clymer there questioning, is this constitutional? Can it be done? Can this $18,000 raise go through? That's going to be another one of those really interesting questions that we get some answers to from the courts in the coming months.
Yeah, we would all love to be able to give ourselves a raise, I guess.
It would be fantastic if we could. Now, here's the thing about that. You can put an increase in there, but it's not supposed to take effect until after the next election. So there's two sides of this that are really kind of unfair, if you want to call it that way. State House members are going to be up for re-election next year. State Senate members are not going to be up for re-election for 3 more years. So you've got House members that, if this does go through and they decide to keep it, are making $18,000 a year more in what's called your at-home or your in-district stipend, versus Senate members who can't legally, if you follow the constitution of this, cannot legally take that money for at least 2 years after that, when their reelection takes place in 2028. So there's a lot of disparity on here. Wes Clymer, senator out of York County, understood this and basically said, you cannot call this out. It's ironic that he has his former Senate member, former Senator Dick Harpootlian there with with his fashionable sunglasses there. But I think that that's the thing that we're looking at here. Can they legally take this money, because they've given themselves permission to do so, and you've had certain members who've decided that they're not going to now?
Well, we'll let the courts decide, as we will with a number of other things that are in that state budget, including that school voucher program that's in there yet again. So, as always on Connect to the Capitol, it's a stay tuned issue.
It is, because
exactly.
I feel like the court will act quickly here because the fiscal year will be beginning soon.
We don't have long for them, and they have to be able to make a decision on this so that the lawmakers know how much they're going to be taking home.
Yeah,
because that ties back to the budget, which is set to start July 1st, which carries over to our story in our next segment about using local government funding and the strings that could be attached to that.
That's exactly. Right. City Councilwoman Aditi Bustles from Columbia will be in studio to talk about a controversial issue linked to that funding and the changing face of government in the capital city of South Carolina.
The city of Columbia in 2021 passed an ordinance banning conversion therapy practices aimed at changing an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity.
It was a move encouraged by several national and state groups that would keep licensed therapists from performing therapy that would alter sexual orientation, gender identity, behaviors, or expressions, or reduce same-sex attractions.
The South Carolina Attorney General has called for the repeal of this ordinance, citing state law that limits local government's ability to regulate health care. And legislators added a proviso to this year's budget that would cut local government funding to municipalities that fail to repeal conversion therapy bans across the state.
However, the Columbia City Council deferred voting on the repeal, a move that could cost the city some $3.7 million in local government funding. Joining us to talk about this and the upcoming elections in the city of Columbia is first-term City Council member Aditi Bustles. Councilwoman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk real quick. South Carolina has gone through a lot of changes as a state. We're growing. The city of Columbia has gone through some significant changes in the makeup of city council and the things that are going on with that. Over the last few years, you've got new approaches, new things that are going on. What are you seeing now as you begin to wrap up this first term on city council?
Well, I would say first and foremost, there's an energy in Columbia that is different, that's positive. I think people are very hopeful for what the city can be for every single person that lives here, no matter if you're up by Fort Jackson or down by Harbison. As the at-large councilwoman, I represent the entire city. So for me, it's especially important for us to be moving forward policies and programs that benefit all of us. And I think what you have seen over the last 4 years is this council really focusing on issues that affect all of us, and specifically our quality of life, whether it's bringing in more jobs or having a more coordinated economic development strategy, investing in our first responders and ensuring that our communities are safe, addressing violence by opening an Office of Violence Prevention and neighborhood safety. We are really focused on hyper-local issues that affect our citizens, and I'm really proud of that in terms of making change and substantial change over the last couple of years around some of these issues.
So you were new to the political scene.
Very much so.
Very much so, and basically ran this out of almost the back of your car. So let's talk about how much has Oddity Bustles changed, how much have your viewpoints of things evolved over these last 3.5 years as a member of council?
I think in many ways I'm still me, and I think that's what a lot of folks love, is that I am that political outsider that came in with a vision to make Columbia this incredible place for you to bring a dream to life or raise a family or stay after you graduate college. But I have learned a lot about how sometimes change is slow. And as someone who wants to do things quickly, you know, I have to be patient and be strategic about the ways in which we go about that change. I've also learned that no issue is 100% black or white, especially on the local level where we have the ability to truly be nonpartisan. We can really look at the root causes of things in many different ways. And so I've also learned that sometimes you got to take a step back, gather a lot of information from people that may have been doing this work for a long time, and then make the best informed decision that may not be the sexiest byline in the newsletter or a newspaper, but you know is right for your constituents. And so that has been one of my biggest kind of lessons, is not everything has this clear-cut answer, and you really have to hold your values and then also what your constituents have asked you to do close.
So we're going to shift gears slightly to a very specific issue that's going on, where you start talking about what can one set of government do to another set of government.
Exactly. You know, without a repeal, the city is looking at losing $3.7 million, a cut in local government funding. How might that impact the people of Columbia on the ground, and what's the City Council's next step on this issue?
So I mentioned to you all that, for example, the homelessness services that we launched came from the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA dollars, which are gone now, right? We are out of that kind of or post-pandemic era. And so budgets are tight. The $3.7 million, those can go to a lot of things like our sidewalks, our roads, you know, doing a lot of beautification work, essential services. Now, this past meeting, we did look at what a modified budget would look like, where we would have to maybe cut back on, say, some of our capital lease funding to offset this potential loss.
Mm-hmm. And how do you weigh principle versus pragmatism when you're taking a look at this kind of funding ultimatum from the state?
Well, I think that you have to, again, go back to what I said earlier, is that no issue is black or white. This is simply an issue that we have been caught up in that really doesn't have that much to do with us, and is very much something that, you know, folks that are not in our level of government are kind of fighting over. And then, you know, two things can also be true. Conversion therapy is not an evidence-based practice. Many medical groups do not recognize it as an evidence-based practice. But for me, it's no longer about that. It's about, you know, local governments being able to do their job and serve their community in a time where a lot of other governments are having a lot of issues in terms of infighting or hyperpartisanship. And to take that away from us, I think, would be a real misstep. And so it's something I'm debating every single day, is, are there other options? Are there different ways that we could offset that 3.7, or are there other legal options that we could pursue so that they don't take that funding away?
Councilwoman Oddity Bustles. And as always, what we're here to do, time in and time out, is keep you connected to the Capitol.
The state of South Carolina putting to death Stephen Stanko on Friday evening by lethal injection, the 6th execution here in South Carolina since a more than decade pause was lifted back in September. Stanko, a convicted double murderer, killed a 74-year-old man, then drained his bank account, stole the man's truck. This was his friend. Then also killed his own girlfriend, raped his girlfriend's daughter, and slit her throat. The girl survived. This is a rare case with Stephen Stanko, though. He was given 2 death sentences. Only one of the cases he had run out of appeals on leading up to that execution on Friday. This could be the last execution here in the state for quite some time as they work through that backlog of more than a decade. 4th now by lethal injection. We've had 2 by firing squad. The controversy leading up to this was the legal team for Stephen Stanko said he would have opted for firing squad. However, that goes back to April and the so-called botched firing squad execution of Michael Motti brought us to his choice on lethal injection.
That's right.
The debate continues.
It does. We've seen some irregularities both with firing squad and even some questions about lethal injection in these last, the prior 5 executions. So raising continued questions about the way that the death penalty is actually carried out in the state of South Carolina and if it verges into cruel and inhumane treatment.
And this is the place where we have had questions about autopsies that have gone on. We had several of the executions that were done by lethal injection. The question is, was the lungs filling with fluid? What was going on with that? And all of that plays into this because we're talking about the taking of a life. And in South Carolina, the death penalty is only for those who have taken a life. And there are a lot of questions that revolve around this, but 6 executions now since September. And it's going to be a while since we see this again, but it's going to start raising questions that I would not be surprised if came up during the legislative session as we get back in 26.
I think you're right, because after the Motti execution, we interviewed Senator Greg Hembry, who is a supporter of
former prosecutor,
of the firing squad, and former prosecutor, who did say in an interview, hey, if discrepancies are found, we will be willing to re-examine this because it is important. If the state is given the power to take a life, it must be done according to or meet the certain protocols.
Right. And the state has certain protocols for the way that they do this, but it again comes into question of what happened with Motti. At that moment, you were there. You witnessed it, and it was an extended time of more than a minute till he passed, versus what had happened with the previous one, which was in a matter of seconds.
Right. And I did not see that one though.
Right, and we've also seen that same extended time for death with lethal injection in this state.
It is a very lengthy process.
Right. Yes.
According to I've never had to be a witness to a lethal injection, but everyone I've spoken with that has seen multiple say it is a very long, it is a very laborious process.
We have a Connect to the Capitol extra that we did with AP reporter Jeffrey Collins, where he talks about that and talks about what it's like because he has witnessed in the modern era, more than a dozen now executions, and a very specific way that he covers those. If you have not had a chance to catch that, you can catch that both on Facebook and at WACH.com for the Connect to the Capitol Extra with Jeffrey Collins.
It is an insightful look at what is a complex process and one that must be done correctly. That's where we're going to end it this week on Connect to the Capitol. We hope everyone enjoys their week, and we'll be back next week right here on a Sunday in South Carolina.
Happy Father's Day.